Welcome to another episode of the Red Delta Project podcast, where we talk about how to get bigger and stronger with Grind-Style Calisthenics, satisfying healthy eating strategies, and other tidbits to help you escape from the diet and exercise rat race. This week's topic is the Grind-Style mindset. Grind-Style Calisthenics is a term that I coined a couple of months ago in an effort to help explain how my approach to bodyweight training is quite different from what you often see other people do with bodyweight training. It's not the high-flying acrobatics that you see a lot on social media, nor is it the light or high-rep stuff that you usually found with calisthenics back in the day. Grind-Style Calisthenics is an attempt to take the experience of lifting heavy weights in the gym and applying that with the simplicity and efficiency of bodyweight training. And how we do that is recognizing that how we think about our exercises actually has to flip. It has to reverse itself from what we usually do in the gym. The way we do this is there's three elements to a strength training exercise that are often thought to be one and the same, but they're actually very different. The first element is weight. How much mass are you moving against gravity? Either external weight or you. You are your weight in bodyweight training. Then you have resistance. This is the resistance that you have against a joint. Then you have the actual tension in the muscle tension, in order to relate to these other two things. As I said, the big mistake is believing that all three are one and the same. That if you have more weight, you have more resistance. If you have more resistance, you have more tension. Therefore, more weight or more reps and stuff, this is the objective, and go through here. And that's great. That's a very good objective to have if lifting more or some performance aspect is your objective, which it may be. You may need to pass a PT test and need to do 100 push-ups in like 90 seconds. Or you may be a strength athlete, like a power lifter, and say, I've got to lift as much weight as possible. If that's the case, this needs to be your priority, and these two variables of resistance and muscle tension need to be manipulated to help you accomplish this goal. But in the world of Grind-Style Calisthenics, it's flipped. The reason for that is because, at least in my approach, it's not about performance. It's not about getting a one-arm push-up or being able to do a certain amount of weight. It's about, I need to make my muscles change. I'm trying to physically alter the condition of my muscles. And the only thing in the world that can do that, short of like an injury or something like getting hit with a hammer, is the tension in the muscles. Muscle tension. Muscle tension is what tells it to get bigger and stronger and more capable. So we seem to be at a little bit of an impasse here, because when we make the performance of weight our goal, we can very easily compromise things like muscle tension or kind of sweep it under the rug and say, it's not that important. It's not that big a deal. But if your objective is, I just want to change my muscles, that should be priority number one, and this should be a secondary influence. Now, let me give you an example on how these three things relate. This I'm holding right now is a 15-pound dumbbell. This is 15 pounds of weight, all right? And that's not going to change. Pretty simple and straightforward. But the amount of resistance I can use this for to generate against a given joint depends on two variables. One, of course, is the amount of weight I'm holding in my hands, naturally, but also the technique that I use to move it through space. So the biggest common example is the lateral race. You have a dumbbell in hand. If I lift my arm straight out to the side, this is generating a given amount of resistance in my deltoid, my shoulder. Okay? Now, if I bend my arm 90 degrees, so my fist is facing forwards, and I lift my elbow out to the side, the movement at my shoulder joint is still the same, but the resistance on my muscle is very different, much reduced, even though the weight is the same. So technique and how you relate to a given weight is very influential to the amount of resistance against a given joint or limb or muscle group that you're lifting. It's not just weight in and of itself. And this is one of the things that's very important to understand about exercise science, because if your objective is to lift more or to do more reps to pass a test or whatnot, you can do things the easier way to improve your numbers. When you read magazines, or not really magazines these days, but blog posts and stuff that say like how to increase your bench press and instantly or increase your deadlift and stuff, all those things are about changing your technique and using your body differently in order to create less resistance with a given weight. So therefore, you can lift more, or you can do more reps. And that's always my advice. People are like, I need to pass this PT test. I'm like, how easy can you do the exercise? How short can you make your range of motion? How wide apart can you make your arms? Let's make this as easy as possible in order to get your numbers up. And if your goal is to get your numbers up, that's a great approach. But when the objective is get the tension in the muscle, we want to go the opposite way. Your muscles actually have a very simple job to do. They have an origin point where they attach to one bone, and they have an insertion point where they attach to another bone. And when they get tense, they bring those 2 points together. That's it. It doesn't matter why those 2 points are coming together. It doesn't matter the exercise you're doing, the tools you're using, the program you're on, or anything. All your muscle knows is it's getting a signal from your brain, an electrical signal saying, hey, contract to bring those 2 points closer together. But that's the job that we're asking it to do in order to make some changes over time from the demands of our mind. The demand originally doesn't come from a weight, it doesn't come from resistance, it comes from your neural signals from your brain. And that's very key to understanding, because if you want to change your muscles, you need to focus primarily on tension first. And if you're focusing on tension, you need to focus on mental code, or a neural code, as I talk about in my book, Smart Bodyweight Training, because that's the thing that creates tension. That's the thing that tells your muscles how they need to behave. That's the thing that actually changes your muscles. The resistance you generate and the weight that you're lifting are influences towards that neurological demand. They're very important. I'm not saying these things aren't important, don't worry about it. They're very important, yes, but they're not the goal. Muscle tension is the goal if you want to change your muscles. If you have a performance goal, that needs to, the weight you lift or the reps you do, that needs to be your goal. But having which one is your goal will determine your fate on what way you are successful. Do you want to be successful in numbers, or do you want to be successful in how you're conditioning your muscles? And yes, they are very correlated. I'm not saying you'll be able to get one without the other, but if you want one, make sure you're focusing on one, make sure you focus your mind on improving that. And the other one is whatever it needs to be in order to achieve your goal. And that way, you're not getting lost down a rabbit hole. So when we have our grind style approach, our approach is use weight as an influence to resistance, but especially with calisthenics, technique is the primary way that we adjust the resistance on a given muscle. So essentially, we do things the hard way. We do things in a more difficult way. Like when I do my push-ups, I put my hand under my chest. I don't have it like out to the side. Why? Because that's easier. Now, I will let people go outside if they're starting out, but eventually getting things in much tighter and closer. Also, having the mindset of how well can we generate tension? People talk about technical quality, like how good are you doing the exercise? It's more about tension quality, which starts with how good does your brain talk to your muscles in the first place? That mind-muscle connection. I know a lot of people kind of poo-poo that, but the fact remains that your tension in the muscle is what changes the muscle. And that tension only comes from your brain. And it's like any other skill from your mind. It comes with practice. It's something that can be developed over time. The better your brain talks to your muscle, the better the quality of the tension in the muscle, and therefore, the more effective the exercise will be. The resistance you're working with, the weight that you're working with, these are secondary concerns. But the tension in and of itself, that's your primary concern. That's why grind style is so very different. Because if you're trying to just get numbers up, you're trying to lift more weight and stuff, that's a good goal. But oftentimes it means doing things the easier way and not really too concerned with muscle tension. And that's how a lot of guys can end up saying, okay, I can lift more weight and I can do a lot more push-ups and stuff, but my muscles themselves aren't changing that much. What's going on? It's because you got to flip the script. You got to say, whatever weight is, whatever. Okay, resistance, I will adjust it primarily through technique and stuff. I'll use weight if I like or whatnot, but the muscle tension creation, time under tension is the primary goal. But be forewarned, that is going to drop your numbers down. But that's why when people ask me, like, Matt, how much can you bench? How much can you squat and stuff? My answer is always the same, as little as possible. I want to create as much tension in the muscles with as little weight and as conservative an approach to technique as I can. Because that way, I know that my quality is higher, but as soon as I start getting my mindset focusing on, I just want to get more weight, I just want to get more reps, I just want to get that one-arm push-up, and you end up with some squirrely-like thing that doesn't really look like a push-up, it's more like you're just having a seizure on the floor, then you're feeding the ego as far as the numbers go, but you're willing to compromise the muscle tension. And in my world, that ain't right. It's not about what's right or wrong. It's about what are your objectives? What is your goal? And then using the variables to match your goal rather than compromising them. All right, hopefully that makes sense for you. Love to hear questions and thoughts down below. Don't forget, if you're listening to this on Apple or Stitcher, really appreciate the reviews, guys. It really helps us out. If you're new here, consider subscribing, both YouTube and on the podcast channels. And I will talk to you guys next week. Till then, be fit, live free.